Welcome to another edition of the MarkeTech Group Minute Podcast. For the past 20 years, MedTech companies seem to be able to drive sales by introducing new technology, and device manufacturers have not really paid attention to establishing their brand in the marketplace. However, recently, this building trend of building brand equity seems to be emerging among MedTech companies. So joining us today to discuss this emerging trend is Dale Wright. Mr. Wright is the Senior Vice President of Contracting at MarkeTech, which is a group purchasing organization based in St. Louis, Missouri. So welcome to the Minute Podcast, Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Vance. Appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you.
Great. So my first question is that GPOs have historically worked on sort of a simple value proposition, the economy of a scale and preferred pricing. But our observation from about a dozen recent marketing research studies seems to indicate that while price is still a very important winning differentiator, brand seems to be surpassing price in winning trust and sales. So not surprisingly, medical device companies are putting more effort into building this brand equity with their customer. Would you agree that shift is occurring?
Yes, I do see a shift in companies trying to promote their brand. However, at least from MarkeTech's viewpoint, we still look at first safety, quality of the products, and then secondly, value to our members. And that's how we decide who we partner with. But I would certainly agree that we've seen a shift in people trying to promote their brands.
And so looking at your list of preferred medical device companies, where do you think brand was evaluated in terms of how you consider which companies to include on the list and which to not include on the list?
Well, there are a lot of dynamics in those decisions, the least of which is, or not the least of which is market share. If you have a brand where they have a large amount of market share, obviously the value of that brand has more weight. If, however, they are one of several companies with a noted brand and we have other options, well then that's not quite as important. At MarkeTech, we're a dual source GPO, so typically we usually address the brand issue one way or another while still addressing the needs of our members.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think the sort of trade-off is between brand, price, and technology when you're weighing your decisions?
Well, we always look, again, as I said, safety, quality first. So, and I guess part of that would be the technology portion of it. We have an initiative for emerging technologies, niche-type players, and so we're constantly looking at that. But again, I guess maybe this is my own personal feeling, but and because we have our own brand, which is a MarkeTech Choice, our private label, brand sometimes doesn't have the effect on us as it does some other GPOs. So as far as the weighting, it probably is a little less weight on us than it would be if it was a sole source GPO.
I see. And have you seen hospitals express an interest in brands that are not carried by a MarkeTech, or are they just primarily concerned with price?
Well, again, price is always important, and we do have some situations where a member or a group of members request a certain brand. Again, typically we can address that because we are a dual source organization, but there are some brands out there where they're known for the high quality, they have the great service levels, and again, they have a good reputation. Obviously, that would have some more bearing.
Could you explain maybe the difference between a dual source GPO such as yourself versus a sole source for those of us who don't know the difference?
You bet. A sole source, typically a GPO would would make a contract award after an RFP process to a single entity or a single company. And that's when brand sometimes elevates to the top. A dual source, we typically contract with two suppliers. And so, for instance, just to give you an example, syringes and needles, we have a contract with both market leaders, Covidien and BD. So, again, our members have directed us, they want choice, and so we try to provide that.
And have you ever heard of maybe a hospital not becoming a MarkeTech number because their preferred brand was not on your list?
Well, I'm sure that happens on occasion, but again, typically because we are a dual source organization, we typically have who they want, and that's kind of the benefit of a MarkeTech. But we do have a handful of maybe 5 or 6 sole source agreements based upon the market share that they have, the service levels, and the demand of our members, where we would do a sole source award. And again, that case, that's when we get the requirement from our members to do that. So that doesn't happen to us a lot because we typically have who they want on contract.
I see. And when you guys decide on who to include on contract, do you use what we call a nested choice model? In other words, do you first look at which brands are preferred most and then negotiate the best possible price with those vendors?
Typically what we do, again, is we look at the quality of the products and the service that goes with that. We look at the total value for our members. Sometimes it comes down to member acceptability and input, where they give us direction on what we should do. We would also do a comparison on pricing, our pricing versus our pricing and versus our competitors' pricing. Again, market share. A big determinant for us also is distribution capabilities. So that's a big issue. The breadth of their agreements in their portfolio, their service records, the financial health of the company. Again, those are the things that we look at when we are awarding a contract.
So you would look at all those things first, and then once you've decided on a couple of sources for that particular product, then you go to negotiate the price? Is that kind of how the process works?
That's exactly right. We actually look at those criteria, and then no matter who is the contract winner and what their brand is, that's how we determine who we contract with. And I have to admit, in some cases, if there's a brand out there that's really important, these members will tell us, so we just have to have them on contract. So that helps in some cases.
I see. And do you think the importance of brand will change the context of GPOs like MarkeTech in the future?
Well, what we've seen, again, and this is probably a direct correlation to the brand, but we've actually seen other GPOs who were sole source models shift towards us because sometimes if they award an agreement to a sole supplier that they partnered with, and now that's not the one that a particular member or group of members want to use, they have to either add those or the members on their own. So we're seeing people come over to the dual source side where the brand is not having the impact it did before.
I see. And do you think that will encourage more hospitals to become members of GPOs, or do you think it'll be fewer? Or, how do you think that's going to change the dynamics of the membership?
Well, I don't know of one member or one hospital who is not a member of a GPO. The decision comes down to which GPO they want to participate with and which GPO fits their needs the most. There are some hospitals who they probably do look at brand and feel like they're large enough to where they can take that brand and leverage their volumes to drive value. I would contend that most people want to have that selection or that choice. They want both of the as many suppliers as they can, or both of the leading suppliers on contract, and then they can pick and choose between the two.
I see. And if you look across sort of the breadth of your product categories, have you been able to point out or pick out maybe a category or two that where brand seems to be more important in selection, in your membership selection versus other product categories?
There is one particular category where there is a market leader that has the lion's share of the market, and they do a very good job of leveraging their name, and that's in sutures. And so they are able to leverage that, and we have a lot of potential members and current members who would like to have those folks on contract. Again, and it seems to come down to who has the market share. If you have a lot of market share, people, obviously your product and your brand is in demand, and you have a little more leverage out there.
And do you think that the correlation between market share and brand is it brand, the building of brand equity and becoming a better known brand what's driving the increase in market share, or has the increase in market share really driven kind of the brand awareness?
Well, the cycle seems to be when a company brings a product to market, if it's a high-quality, high-value product, that's what drives the brand. And as the brand gains in momentum and gains in popularity and acceptance, then the cycle seems to turn to where they can then start using that market share that they have to drive economies for themselves. They can direct pricing. They can make demands upon the end users that they typically wouldn't have before. So, again, there seems to be a cycle where its value drives demand, and after a while, then the brand drives sales.
So that's kind of the model for more mature companies. What about kind of newer, innovative companies or generic companies that don't have an established or nationally recognized brand yet? I mean, what can they do to become part of a GPO and be nationally recognized, increase their market share?
Well, they need to make sure, again, that they have safe, high-quality products, that they service those products, and that they make sure that they take care of their members, and that the products have exceptional outcomes for those who are using them. And then I would recommend also that distribution be in place, whether it be products that are sold direct to a user or whether it's through a distributor. If it's through a distributor, I would certainly advise that that supplier with that brand make sure that he has his brand engaged with those distributors who control so much of the commerce going back and forth between the seller and the buyer.
Mm-hmm. And so what extent is Amerinet looking or involved with innovative companies before they established a significant level of brand? And do you guys work with a lot of startups? Or?
We actually do in a couple of ways. First, we have a new technology, emerging technology niche group that we have. And matter of fact, yesterday we hosted a forum where twice a year we have some of our members come in to our corporate offices, and they give us guidance on making contract awards, give us guidance on brands and products that they would like to see us contract with. And in conjunction with our meeting yesterday, we brought in some new technology companies where these members got to touch and feel the products, talk to the people from the company, and then gave us recommendations, should we put them on contract or not, or gave us other ideas on what we should do with those. The other mechanism is our Amerinet Choice brand. That is our private label brand, and we pride ourselves in using a lot of small manufacturers with emerging technology, and we believe that they are flexible and nimble and aggressive to work with us to provide value to our members. So our Amerinet Choice brand, we use that as a venue for small emerging companies as well.
I see. And to what extent can generic companies, for example, we'll take your example of the sutures. I mean, is there a generic company out there, and are they going to be able to build any brand equity because they're such a large market leader right now, or are they really condemned to just competing only on price?
Well, unfortunately, in the case of the sutures, it's pretty much you're going to have to beat them on value to get the user's attention. Some of these folks have been, some of these clinicians and doctors have been trained on certain products, and so they feel comfortable with that. And because of lawsuits and because of exposure that they have, they want to use what they're comfortable with. So there has to be a value there to get their attention to make sure they're willing to do that. Again, the Amerinet Choice model, though, we actually put our name on the product. It's our private label brand, and so that minimizes the reason or the name brand that we might be competing against. We've already established that brand, and so the companies we work with, their brand is not a drawback for our members to use because it had good experiences in the past.
Right. So you guys are putting your Amerinet brand on a sort of less known brand to help promote, to kind of overcome that brand barrier, I guess, to adoption.
That's exactly right. And now that new company becomes part of a family of other Amerinet Choice products, and now our members have had good experiences with those others in value and quality, etc., and they've actually bought into the Amerinet brand, and so that helps new emerging companies to get some market share. Right.
So it really sounds like for a startup company, a new company, they still need to sort of establish themselves and have a footprint, be it small, and in order to be considered maybe under this Amerinet Choice model, versus coming to you with a new product and saying, well, be our distributor and help us drive our market share. So it sounds like the startup companies still have some work cut out for them at the early stages.
Well, they do. Again, they still have to go through that RFP process of the quality, the total financial value. We always run these past and trial these in some of our very largest members, feeling that if it works at our very largest, most discriminating members, it will work in most of our members. And so there is some testing that goes on, but once that testing is accomplished and they pass that test, then they have a real story they can tell to go out and market their products.
Let's take a little bit of an international twist. Does Amerinet consider the inclusion of foreign startup medical device companies? And again, these would be companies that maybe have less than $500 million in annual sales.
Well, again, I'm sorry to keep selling Amerinet Choice, but that's kind of how we cut our teeth on building our brand, is working through smaller and sometimes international companies. The challenge has been, since we don't actually take title to the product, they would need to have a depot here in the United States so we could work with someone in the commerce of moving product here in the United States. So, but we do a lot of business with international companies through our Amerinet Choice venue.
And are there factors that Amerinet evaluates differently when looking at American companies versus an Asian company versus a European company?
Well, there are. And the international companies, as I said, there needs to be some type of an American drop-off or depot for them to be able to take product and send that out to either the direct users or distributors. They need to have a distribution channel set up to get the products from their shelves onto the shelves of the users. So that has to be taken into consideration. Obviously, they need to have authorized 510Ks from the FDA to make sure that the U.S. government has approved them to use to sell their products here. We look to make sure they've not had any 480 foreign warnings from the FDA. So there's a few more hoops that have to be jumped through for international companies, but I would also say we found some of the very best value and best brands, if you will, coming from international sources as opposed to even domestic sources.
I see. And any difference between an Asian company versus European company, or they're all kind of viewed as the same?
The European companies typically are known for really high-quality products with great componentry and good craftsmanship. The Asian companies, they're known for a little better value with good craftsmanship. Sometimes they even use the European materials to use the craftsmanship. So, again, seems to be European. They kind of promote their quality. The Asian seems to quote and promote their value.
So it sounds like there are some extra regulatory steps that foreign companies need to satisfy in order to be considered. And it sounds like they've got a pretty good chance to work with Amerinet. What about other GPOs that you're aware of? Is it harder for foreign companies to work with those GPOs, or do they have similar setups like Amerinet?
Well, a lot of GPOs actually work with middlemen who are brokers on behalf of these international companies, and so there are companies actually set up to do importing. And once they have importing, then there's other companies set up to do the marketing and sales. So I can't speak for the other companies, but I can only assume they're working with these other companies, these marketing companies, who promote foreign products.
I see. So to sum up this section, it sounds like to be considered for a Amerinet choice, the foreign companies, as long as they have the FDA approvals and no warnings, and they've got the distribution channels set up here in the U.S., then they could be considered just like any other American company that Amerinet would look at by looking at market share and the service history and patient outcomes.
We absolutely do, and we encourage that. We love to talk to those type of companies.
Well, fantastic. Well, Mr. Wright, those are all the questions I have for today. I really appreciate your time and joining us to talk about brand in the GPO setting.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.